Okay. Good morning, all of you. I'm very happy to introduce our guest speaker for today. He is Mr. Arunachalam. Arunachalam is from Chennai, and he is a math graduate as well as he is an actuary. I'm not sure how many of you would have heard of this subject called actuarial science, or in some countries they call it actuarial math, and it is considered as one of the toughest professional exams to crack. CA is considered as a very hard exam to crack. Actually, is even harder. And usually there are not much coaching or support that students receive, right, Arun?
Yeah,
For actually,
yeah, that's right.
yeah. And even if you clear one or two subjects, it is considered really amazing. And all the subjects are math and
Yeah,
applied math. And Arun has, he had not only cleared the actuary exam, but he stood first in subjects like probability and statistics, morality, pensions and employee benefits, and so on. So he is coming from a very strong applied math background as well as pure math background, because he is a math graduate. And he is working as an independent consultant for actuaries, and he's based out of Chennai, and he has got a wide experience when it comes to giving advices to companies in terms of life insurance, investments, general insurance, or technology and pensions, and so on. And he has been in the positions like vice president and honorary secretary of the Institute of Actuaries in India. He also does sessions like how he's doing for all of you. He does sessions, but that's usually for graduate and postgraduate students. He has also taught actuarial subjects in the Madras University. And he's also been setting papers and evaluating the examination when it comes to actuarial studies and so on. So he's deeply passionate about what he's doing, and he's also passionate about teaching, and that is why he volunteered to be here. And we were very lucky to have got him as a speaker. And since last few weeks we have been discussing about his idea of what he's going to present. And it is all the more it gives us more pleasure when we see parents like Arun, because I'm saying parents because Arun is a parent of two Ram TP students who participated in 2021, Ananya and Arjun. And after the camp, he said that maybe I can share something with these bunch of students who are so passionate about mathematics. So that's how all these ideas have evolved, and since last couple of months we have been discussing on this. Now, before I give the mic to Arun, I thought I'll just share some fun facts about Arun, which his kids were kind enough to share with us. So you'll guess his favorite color from the presentation, and I'll not give it away. You can find out what his favorite color is, and towards the end maybe you can share. He's fond of dosa. One more person from Chennai who loves dosa. And he, as a child, he was not thinking of doing something in actuarial science per se. Okay, he was passionate about being a pilot, so he wanted to be a pilot, and he ended up being a actuary and also doing the pure math side of it. And he started working at a very early age, so he has got a lot of work experience to him. He started his job before even he finished his graduation. At the age of 18 he started working, and at some time he had to complete his graduation, so he gave something like 18 subjects in 12 days to complete his graduation. So we have an amazing personality with lot of lot of skills, and coming from different backgrounds, and an avid appreciator of classical music, cricket, and tennis. Arun, we are very happy to have you with us today. I'll hand it over to you. Over to you.
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you for the kind introduction and wonderful words. Appreciate that. I'm very privileged and honored to be part of the RAMTP and to present this presentation on the finance and mathematics linkage to the students. Thank you so much for the opportunity and a privilege for that. I just hope that the students like the session and they get inspired from the linkages between mathematics and finance. So I thought let me just give a brief intro about how I ended up in finance, and then we can start the session. So as you said, I had to join a first job at age 18. That was by not by choice. I just wrote some competitive exam, got selected in one of the insurance companies, and I had to join an insurance company. So to do that, I discontinued my college when I was doing my third year, and unfortunately, the college said, no, you cannot carry your credits. You will have to write afresh. So I had to write afresh all the 3-year papers, and that's how I ended up writing those subjects. Nothing great otherwise. Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to complete that graduation in the next year, and I just continued with my actuarial exams and my other insurance and accounting type of exams, and just proceeded on that. I'm more a math lover, and hence I'm very happy about doing this for the set of students who are really very passionate and they're the brightest minds of mathematics talent in the country. So with that intro, I thought let me just start the presentation if you're okay. And just a quick, let's stop at intermediate point of time to take the questions rather than having the questions at each of those slides. So my presentation is anyway into small block. So at the end of each block, let's have a small question session, and then we will move to the next block. Yeah, let me just share the screen and the presentation. Is this visible?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So mathematics of finance is this topic that I'm going to present to you all. This is just an introduction of the whole subject. It's a vast ocean, and I thought let me just give a brief overview of the subject, and then you can probably dive deep on that. As we know, I'm here as I love math and finance. So let's start with a quick question on finance. Like, all of you know what is finance, right? I don't have to brief it. But why mathematics of finance? Finance is related to all your money, right? At the end of the day, all your finances are linked, and they're all numbers. At the end of the day, if you transact 1,000 rupee with somebody, if you give 1,000 rupee to somebody, then it's a money, it's a number, right? So it's all related to math at one point of time, and there is a lot of interlinkages between math and finance as they have found over a period of time. And there is also the investment part of it, where you invest money in some place and then you get a interest out of that investment, like a fixed deposit. How that investment return is calculated, all of that is linked to mathematics. So that's about a quick intro about how the linkage works, right? So finance deal with money and investments, right? So that's why we are here, right? Money and investment have a lot of math number, and that's why we are dealing this subject. So then comes what is interest. The interest I'm talking in terms of the mathematical part, not the interest of ice creams and chocolates. Yeah, so all of us love various things, right? We have interest on many different facets in life. But what we are interested here is about the interest in the finance terminology. So what is interest, right? All of you know when you invest money in a bank, right? For example, if we do a fixed deposit in a bank, they pay interest to us, right? That's the interest, right? So that's the two intro words I wanted to start with before we jump into the session. So interest is the money paid, but there is a catch here. This money is paid regularly to you at some particular rate. Yeah, what is that particular rate? The government may say, the bank may say, I pay around 8% to you for 1 year period, or 7% to you right? That's the investment return or the interest rate that it carries. And the interest is also paid regularly over a period of time. So those are some of the small, basic constituents of interest, right? So let's now move on to the subject now. Okay. So some of these initial bits are very basics. Most of you know this, but I just wanted to cover this so that we build on the basics, towards the end of the presentation. So if you're already aware of that, that's very good. And if you're not, it's anyway a basic, so you don't have to worry about it. You will catch it in no time, right? So let's start with accumulated value. Okay. So what is an accumulated value? Okay. So let's take an example for, say, you have about an amount now, and you invest this in a bank for a period of 1 year, say, and they give an interest rate of 7% per annum, right? When we say 7% per annum, it is, if it is 100, it is 7, right? So since it is 1,000, our investment is 1,000, they give about $70 at the end of the first year, right? So that's the interest that they will give, and they will repay our money, which is 1,000, which becomes 1,070, right? So that it's as simple as that. So nothing great here. The first part, what we invest is the capital or the principal, and the interest rate, which we have already defined, and there is a time period to it, right? So how much is the period of investment, which is in this case 1 year, and the interest is about 70, and the accumulated value is the total of our investment and the total of our investment and interest put together. So in this case, it is 1,070. This 1,070 is nothing but 1,000 into 1 plus I. I, we call it as an interest rate because it is interest, we call it as an I, and here it is 7%, so it is 1,000 into 1.07. So let me just modify this example slightly and just say this investment is now for a period of 3 years instead of 1 year. So what happens is, at the end of 1 year, we get an amount like 1,070, right? The 1,070 is again invested back into the bank. Then we get something at the end of second year. It is again invested into the bank. We get some money out of the third year. So what is the accumulated value at the end of third year? It is simply 3 times, right? So we invest for 3 years. First year, we get 1,000 into 1.07. Second year, another 1.07. Third year, another 1.07. So at the end of 3 years, it becomes 1.07 whole cube into 1,000, which becomes 1,225, right? In this portion, the interest is about 225 rupees and the balance is the capital, right? So this is a very simple example on the accumulated value. Now I'm just generalizing this example so that we apply this later. So suppose instead of 1,000, I say that I have a cash of C, right? And I invest this amount for n year instead of 1 year or 3 year. My investment is for a period of n year, and instead of 7%, I make this an I%. So that now we get a formula, right? So what is the formula? Just a moment. Just one moment. So this becomes C into 1 plus I whole power n. Let me just get the presentation on. It's not moving forward.
Maybe you can stop sharing and then start sharing again. Sometimes it works, in case you want to try.
This come now?
Yes, can you do next? The next part hasn't come. No, it's not come.
It's not come. Okay, just hold on for a moment. Let me just give this on.
Meanwhile, those who got the answer, maybe you can just send it to me.
Yeah.
Just send it to me as a private chat, okay? I'll repeat the variables if you want. You have C is the amount that you have invested, N is the number of years, and I is the percentage, the rate of interest. Okay. So whatever you guys have sent, that is what? That is the interest. Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
We can see now.
So, yeah, right. Yeah. So now you can see this, right? Yeah. Sorry about the mishap. Yeah. So this becomes C into 1 plus I whole power n, as all of you might have seen, worked out in this. So it's very simple example, right? Now so this is accumulated value. Is there any doubt? There were some, questions which might have
Sorry,
come,
Arun,
right?
if I may just request to go back to the earlier slide, because whatever everybody shared with me was the accumulated value. I thought maybe you just want to say about why is this -1.
Oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, so the accumulated value is 1000. In our earlier case, that we have seen in the earlier slide, right? 1225 was our accumulated value, right? There, our capital is 1000, right? So when I subtract that capital, so in this case, in the first example, we had 1070 as the accumulated value. Out of this, 1000 is the capital. So I subtract the 1000 to get the interest portion, right? So that is the capital portion is subtracted. So here in the second example, we subtract again the 1000 from the 1225, which is the accumulated value. And hence, the balance becomes the interest, which is 225. In a generalized case, exactly the accumulated values C into 1 plus I whole power n. And now this is including our capital and the interest. Now we subtract the interest in this bit, the capital in this bit to get the interest, which becomes C into 1 plus I whole power n minus C. If I take the C outside, it becomes C into 1 plus I whole power n minus 1. That's in the summary. Okay, so this is a very simple example of accumulated value. So if I invest, say, in a fixed deposit, this is exactly how the bank will calculate and give us back the money. Okay. So the accumulated value is a future value, or at the end of the period value, or in some cases, they call it as a time and value, right? In our 3-year example, it was 1225. Now let's understand a bit deeper about the rate of interest. We have used a rate of interest in this example, right? A 7% rate of interest, right? So now, what is special about this rate of interest? There are some terminologies that we need to understand about the rate of interest. That's what we are going to cover in this session. So rate of interest usually is expressed as percentage, as you would have seen. And if it says 7%, then it is for 1 rupee, right? It's for 1 unit of rupee, right? 7% means 7 for 100. So for 1, it is 0.07. And there will always be an associated time period. So when I say 7%, then I say 7% per annum. Now you can look at here, I am saying 7% per annum, right? So that means 7% for 1 year. If it is 8% per annum, then it will be 8. But if it is for half a year, then it will be half of that. The bank will not give you 7% for half a year. They'll give you only 3.5% if you invest the money for half a year. So there is always a time period attached to the rate of interest, right? Now, this is usually denoted as I, and this is called effective rate of interest. This is a terminology that is used for this mathematics of finance subject. Now, as all of us are, we have different names, right? Sometimes we may have our name could be, having a nickname, right? My full name is Arunachalam. People call me Arun, right? So there are different ways of explaining this interest rate, right? So one way is the effective rate of interest itself, which they say 7% per annum or 8% per annum. But sometimes they say, 8% per annum convertible half-yearly, okay? Or else 10% per annum convertible 4 times a year. Okay, so this is another way of expressing the interest. There is nothing great about this, except that the effective, if I say 8% per annum convertible half-yearly, that means the effective rate for half year is 4%. If I say 10% for 4-time convertible, then the effective rate is 2.5% for a 3-month period. So in effect, if I say IM, this is not I power M, this is generally terminology used in the subject IM. If I say IM per annum convertible M times a year, because it is convertible M times a year, I take a unit period and then divide it into M different small parts. And for one part, which is the 1/mth of that year, the interest rate would be IM by M. So in your example, if I say that 10%, if I take the 10% case, here the M equal to 4, and the first one is 10 divided by 4, which becomes 2.5, which is for 1/4, which is quarter of a year or a 3-month period. So that is how this is defined. So there is, some people may define it in a nominal way, some people may define it in an effective way. Whatever way they give us the interest rate, we can calculate our accumulated value, or we can calculate any future value as required by the bank or by the investor. Okay. Now this IM is called the nominal rate. So where we have seen effective rate is defined as I and the nominal rate is defined as IM. Okay. Now what happens here is that as we see 8% per annum convertible half-yearly works out to 4% per half year, right? So that means the effective rate for a full year period, it's a 2 half-year period. So you'll have to accumulate it first for the first half year and then to the second half year. So it becomes 1.04 square, and that is equivalent to a 8.16% of interest. So this 8% per annum convertible half-yearly is equivalent to 8.16% convertible annual, or it's called 8.16% per annum. That's the effective rate of interest. So for any nominal rate of interest, we can calculate an effective rate of interest. Similarly, for any effective rate of interest, we can calculate a nominal rate of interest. So in this case, our IM is 8%. Here M equal to 2 and IE becomes 8.16. So this is a very simple mathematical relationship, like how we have accumulated for 3 years. Here we have accumulated for 2 half years. We have only taken the interest rate. That's all. Okay. Now, if I have to explain with another example, say the other one, where we have a convertible 4 times a year, the equivalent quarterly rate is 2.5%. And if we accumulate it for a 4-quarter period, then it becomes around 10.38%. So this 10% is the IM here, and 10.38% is the I, and here the M is 4. So in general, we can convert the effective rate into a nominal rate and a nominal rate into an effective rate by just an accumulation formula. If I is the effective rate and IM is the nominal rate, these two are the equations. Now I hope this is quite straightforward. So I'm not going to prove it or kind of explain to this. This IM by M is what we have calculated, 10/4, or our the other rate which we have used, right? In this case, 8/2, right? Right. So it is this IM by M is either 10/4 or 8/2 or whatever that is given. Because we are dividing by that number of period, then we are accumulating for that period, and then we are subtracting 1 because we'll have to find only the interest part, not the capital part. Similarly, if the effective rate is given, then I can find the nominal rate. I just find the mth root of that 1 plus I and subtract 1 and multiply by M, because I'll have to show it as a convertible M times a year. So this is a very simple relationship between a nominal and effective rate of interest. Okay. Now this M is a period, right? It can be convertible half year, it can be convertible quarter year, it can be convertible monthly. In such case, it becomes 12. M becomes 12, then M can become 365. In such a case, it is convertible monthly. So we can keep on increasing the M, and if M tends to infinity, then the interest is actually happening at every moment, So we have a capital, we have an interest at the moment, then that becomes an accumulation, then we have another interest. So we can continue like that. So if m tends to infinity, then this is defined as a force of interest. And this force of interest is generally equivalent to ln 1 plus I, which is log 1 log to the base e. Okay. So this is these are all very basic fundamentals which I wanted to explain before we move into the subject in detail. If you want, I can show this delta equal to ln 1 plus I. We will do that at the end of the session. If there are any questions till now, I would like to take it before we move on to building the subject. Okay. Now, no questions. Okay. Let's move to the present value. We have seen the accumulated value, right? Where we had at the beginning of the period some amount, 1,000, right? Now we do not know how much we have currently, right? That is where we have to find the present value. This is what is called present value. We have some money, we are investing that money, and we get a return, and we know the accumulated value. Now, what is the present value of that? So that is what is the investment, how much we have invested to get the value at the end of the period, right? So this is just a reversal of what we have done. I mean, instead of multiplying by 1.09, we are just dividing by 1.09 to get the present value, right? If I had 917 at the beginning, right? And if I had invested that money on 9%, at the end of 1 year, this would have become 917 into 1.09, which will be equivalent to 1,000, right? So the 1,000 at the end of 1 year period is having a present value of 917 at time 0 or at the time of initial investment. So this 1,000 is slightly less, right? Like an interest, this is called a discount. If I give you the accumulated value and if you find the present value, this is termed as the discount. Now we have a discount of 1,000 on today's term, right? The discount amount is around 82, in this case, right? Slightly, there is a slight, there would be a slight difference between the interest amount and the discount amount, because in the interest amount we take the capital as 1,000 at the beginning, we take it as 1,000. In this case, the initial amount becomes 917, right? So to that effect, there will be a minor difference between the interest and the discount. Except that, both are the same. Now, if I modify this example for a 3-year period, then this becomes 1,000 divided by 1.09 whole cube, which becomes 772, right? So if you have 772 today and you invest in a bank for a 3-year period, and the bank gives you 9% per annum, then at the end of 3-year period, you will have 1,000, right? So the discount is 228 rupees in this case, which is effectively the interest you have here. So if I'm generalizing this, like what we have done for the accumulated value, there we have taken the initial amount as C. Here I am taking the accumulated amount as A. Now the present value becomes A divided by 1 plus I whole power n, because we are investing for an year. The interest rate is I, and that is what is the initial period money, which is called the present value, which is equal to A into V power n. So we define something called V, which is equal to 1 by 1 plus I. Instead of writing 1 by 1 plus I so many times, we just say A into V power n. So this is a very quick example on the present value. Now we are going to build on this. So if there are any doubts on this, I would like to sort out at this point of time before we move to the next block.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So guys, if you have any questions, or if you want Arun to go over something once again, just do a raise hand and speak up, and then let's go over that once again.
We can.
All right, Arun, looks like everybody's good. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay. So now we are just going to touch upon rates of discount. Now you don't worry about this too much. No, this is not much used in the calculations. But just like a rate of interest, we would like to briefly present you what a rate of discount is and how the interlinkages are working. The I, there is something called a D, which is the rate of discount. We have multiplied 1000 by 1 plus I, right? Similarly, what is done is D is nothing but I by 1 plus I. You remember for our example, we had a accumulated value of 1000, and using that we have calculated a present value, right? So the discount we have calculated, right? That discount amount is calculated using this formula, which is I by 1 plus I, which is nothing but IV. So if I have an investment of investment, and if I have a discount to that, add the discount to that, I'll get 1 plus 1 at the end of the period. So 1 plus I divided by 1 plus I will become 1 plus I by 1 plus I will become 1. So that is how it is. So you may note that 1 plus I into 1 minus D is 1. So if I have 1 minus D at the beginning of the period, then I will earn an interest of 1 plus I and it will become 1, right? So the discount is D. Similarly, if I have 1 plus I at the end of the period, and if I apply a discount of D to it, I'll get 1, which is the present value of the 1 plus I. So either way, it is a contra for the interest rate, which is the I. Similar to our effective and nominal rates of interest, we have effective and nominal rates of discount, which is linked using this formula. There we have used 1 plus I. Here we have used 1 minus D. That's the only difference. It's the same logic. Nothing, nothing great over here. So I'll skip this. As we have already seen the 1 plus I m by m whole power m formula. We do not use the discount much in the calculation, and hence I'm just skipping this. The force of discount is equal to minus ln 1 minus D, which is exactly equal to ln of 1 plus I. Okay. So with this, we are going to start our detailed session on annuities, right? So far, we have been, looking at cash flow of only one cash flow. The cash flow is, either I have invested 1000 or, I have an accumulated value at the end of the period. It's only one point of time I had one cash flow. But in reality, there will be multiple cash flows at each point of time. We will see that now. And then we have interest rates also, right? We have seen interest rate, 9% per annum or 7% or 8%, but the interest would be for a longer period of time. The interest rates could vary, the cash flows could vary, and there will also be a time period associated with each of this. So all these three components put together, form the subject mathematics of finance. There will be another component which will be built on top of this in an insurance modeling, which is called the probability. For each cash flow, they will add a probability to that. But right now we are not getting into that. We will just only look at the cash flow part of it. Okay, only the finance part of it, not the probability related finance part of it. Okay. Now, as I said, now we have only seen cash flow at one point of time, right? But the cash flows could be at multiple point of time, And I'm only taking a timeline earlier, just for example. So time zero is actually beginning of the year one, okay? And this one is actually the end of year one. The 2 is actually the end of year 2, and the 12 is actually the end of year 12. So in this cash flow example 1, I am having a cash flow of 1 at every point of time at each beginning of the year, right? So that is how the cash flow is. Now I can have a cash flow like this, where I don't have any cash flow at the beginning of first year, but whereas I have a cash flow all through the other periods. Now I can have a cash flow like this. I may not have a cash flow at the end of the period, which is at the end of 12th year, but I have a cash flow, uniform cash flows. All of this I am showing an example of uniform cash flows. I can have a cash flow like this, where the cash flows are ununiform, not uniform, right? I don't have a cash flow at some point which is 0. I have a positive cash flow. I have a negative cash flow. I have 2.5 cash flows. So cash flow could be anything, and it could be at any point of time. Here I have shown an example only at particular point of time. Like say, for example, if it is 5, it is at the end of 5th year period. The cash flow could even happen on 4.5 year time period, which I have not shown here. So the cash flows literally can happen for any amount and at any point of time, right? Now, and there are two things to cash flows. Suppose if I receive a cash flow, it is positive for me. And if I give a cash flow, it is negative for me, right? So that is how we look at it, which is a plus for us, and like how you are depositing money in a bank, right? Now we are going to build on this cash flows and the present value, which we have seen earlier, to something called an annuity. How that works, right? Now you should know.
Sorry,
yeah,
Arun, I had a quick question.
Yes.
So in simple words, can you explain what is cash flow?
Cash flow is the money that either you receive or you pay.
Okay.
Okay. So in the first example, I am receiving 1 rupee. Say I'm using a rupee terminology. I am receiving 1 rupee at the beginning of each year. So at time 0, I am receiving 1 rupee. At time 1, I am receiving 1 rupee. At time 2, I am receiving 1 rupee, like that.
So
it could be any.
Is it net of the money that you are also paying? So it is 1 rupee left with you, or is it you are just receiving?
It is not the balance. It is not the balance with us. It is only the amount of the flow. It is what comes in or what goes out. You may have 100 rupees at the beginning of the period, but you receive 1 rupee. Then we are only talking about that 1 rupee that you are receiving.
Right.
Whatever that you already have, is not related. It's only the flow out of you or flow into you.
Okay.
Okay. So that is what is looked into it.
There is one more question, it seems. Do you want to take it now, or you want to take it later?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. If you could just know, certainly.
Shivam?
So I had to ask the same thing. What are cash flows? But the doubt is cleared now.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Okay.
There is one more, it seems.
Yeah, sure.
Raghav?
Yes, sir. So means if it is plus cash flow, if it means that if the cash flow is plus, it means the rupees coming in with us, and if it is negative, then the rupees going out of us.
Exactly. That's right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Super. Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. So the cash flows are just the cash that is flowing into us and are flowing out of us. Okay. So we are going to use this now. So one particular thing I want to tell you is that timing is important in the cash flow, right? At what point of time it comes. So for example, here, this minus 1,000, it is, if I just go to the timeline, it says 6. Is this beginning of year 6 or end of year 6? So if you just draw a timeline, you will just mark 6, and you may not, you'll have to be clear what this exactly 6 means. This is actually end of time, year 6. That is how we have defined our timeline. So this particular first point is beginning of year 1 or end of year 0. This second point is end of year 1 or beginning of year 2. So like that, we will have to be very clear to the point of time. Otherwise, we would use a wrong time period in discounting or accumulating. So for example, if I am discounting this 1,000, which is a negative cash flow, for a 6 year, should I, this is exactly 6 year. I have used an end of period. Should I discount it for 6 or 7? Because this is end of 6th year and beginning of 7th year, right? So those questions will come as we do a problem. So it's very important that you clearly relate the cash flow to the particular point of time. Okay. With that, we'll move to the slide now. We are going to now learn something called an immediate annuity, which is one of the building blocks of the entire subject, mathematics of finance. This is also called immediate annuity certain. Okay. So it is called an annuity because generally when they started, it was an annual payment, and hence they defined it as an annuity, right? Here the cash flows are defined like this, right? So for the time being, let's forget about whether we are receiving the money or paying the money. We are not bothered about the amount. We are only looking at the absolute value. The cash flows, the absolute value of the cash flows are defined like this. At the end of each year, the cash flow is 1, right? So at the end of first year, it's a beginning of first year, so there is no cash flow. At the end of first year, which is time period 1, we have 1. At the end of second year, we have 1. Similarly, till the end of 12th year, we have a cash flow. I have taken a 12-year example only. We can do this for any time period. So this is called an immediate annuity. This is called immediate because the payment starts immediately now. It is not deferred. No, in a sense, this it's not deferred for 5 years and the payment starts after 5 years. The payment starts immediately. Though the payment starts immediately, the first payment is due at the end of first year only. So the at time 0, the cash flow is 0. At time 1, the cash flow is 1, and so on. This is how the cash flow is for an immediate annuity or an immediate annuity certain. Okay. Now, what we are going to do is that we are going to apply discounting and accumulation factor to this. What are the discounting factors? We know that the discounting factor is V power n. When we have done the present value, we have done a discounting factor of V power n. And similarly, the accumulating factor is 1 plus I to the power n. So I'll just tell you with an example. Now, suppose we look at the cash flow at the end of time period 4, which is 1, right? Only this cash flow, I am finding the present value of this cash flow. Only this cash flow, not the other cash flows. This is 1 into V power 4, right? That will become the value of this 1 at point of time 0, right? So that is what is the present value. So I calculate the present value for each of these cash flows separately and add it up to find out the present value of all the cash flows. Similarly, if I have to find out what is the accumulated value of this 1 at the end of year 12, we will have to accumulate this 1 for a further period of 8 years, right? So that is why here it becomes 1 plus I whole power 8. So this 1 gets accumulated for a period of 1 plus I for a period of 8 years, and hence it becomes 1 plus I whole power 8. So this cash flow, either I can take it to the time 0 value, in which case I call it as a present value, or else I take it to the time 12 value, in which case I am calling it as an accumulated value, right? So for each of these cash flows, I calculate this present value and accumulated value independently of the other one and add it up together to find out what is the present value of all the cash flows or what is the accumulated value of all the cash flows. Let's first look at what is the present value of this cash flows, right? So the present value of all these cash flows becomes, so for this cash flow, it becomes V power 4, right? For this cash flow, this becomes V power 5. For the first cash flow, it is 0, so there is no value. For this cash flow, this becomes V. So then here V square, V cube. So I will have V plus V square plus V cube plus and so on up to V power 12, which is a geometric progression, right? With the ratio of V. So if I just simplify that, I get a formula of 1 minus V power 12 by I. Okay. So this is called the present value of all these cash flows, and this is called an immediate annuity. Now you'll have to also look at the 2-3 small minor things here. This is A is for annuity, which is an immediate annuity, and 12 is the time period. And there is a notation like this. This is a usual actuarial notation which is used for an immediate annuity. This is nothing but a summation of all the present values of each of these cash flows. At time 0 the value is 0, and hence I have taken off that 0. It becomes 1 to 12 V power t, and this is equal to 1 minus V power 12 by I. Similarly, I can calculate the accumulated value. Again, it is a geometric progression. The only thing is it will become 1 plus 1 plus I plus 1 plus I square plus 1 plus I cube and so on up to 1 plus I power 11, which is equal to 1 plus I power 12 minus 1 divided by I. This is called AS12, which is a sum or an accumulated value at the end of year 12. So this is a very simple uniform cash flow and uniform interest rate present value and accumulated value of an immediate annuity certain. This is for a 12-year period, right? Suppose if I use a n-year period, then the formula becomes for n. So I call it an, and this is equal to 1 minus V power n by I, or else if it's an accumulated value, this becomes 1 plus I whole power n minus 1 divided by I. There is one interesting thing which happens. Suppose if there is an annuity which continues forever, okay, which is called a perpetuity, right? And what is the present value of this perpetuity, right? So in this case, now I'm just finding A infinity, right? N becomes infinity. N is tending to infinity. If N is tending to infinity, this v power n will tend to 0 because v is nothing but 1 by 1 plus I, which is greater than 1 by 1 plus I is less than 1, because 1 plus I is greater than 1 and 1 by 1 plus I is less than 1. So this v power n will tend to 0, and hence if I have a annuity which continues forever, the present value of that annuity is called perpetuity, and the present value will become 1 by I. This is about an immediate annuity certain.
Sorry, Arun, if I may just interrupt to ask a question.
Please, yes.
So can you elaborate what does tends to infinity mean for the sake of those who are not familiar with the term?
Okay, right. Okay. So what happens, when we have a 2-year, annuity, the cash flow is for a 2-year period, right? So that point of time, our present value is 1 minus v square by I. If I have a say 10-year annuity, then my formula becomes 1 minus v power n by 1 minus v power 10 by I. What that means is I have an annual payment for a period of 10 years, 1 rupee at the end of each year for a period of 10 years. Okay, now the present value is 1 minus v power 10 by I. Now I can keep on increasing this period. Instead of 10 years, I can have a 15-year annuity. I can have a 20-year annuity. I can have a 100-year annuity. I can have a 500-year annuity. So at some point of time, we can, if somebody is continuously paying it, it tends to, it becomes infinity. It is as large as it can be, right? So no, it can get on to 10,000, 20,000 and so on. And at some point of time, it is not defined, and it is the value of n tending to infinity. So in other words, somebody is paying the annuity at the end of each year forever. They are not stopping the annuity, right? If it is a 10,000 year period, they have to stop it at the end of year 10,000. If it is not 20,000 year period, they will stop it at the end of year 20,000. But this is not stopped. This is continuously being paid, till till infinity. And there is no, the infinity never stops, right? It keeps on counting. So, it is paid forever. So then we are finding a present value of that, which is become 1 by I. This is a very simple, infinite geometric progression, isn't it? If you have an infinite geometric progression, a by 1 minus r. So in this case, a is 1. And r 1 minus r, right? So it is, in this case, it is r minus 1 because r is greater than 1, and 1 plus I minus 1. 1 plus I is how it is accumulating, and minus 1 becomes I, 1 by I. That's all, as simple as that.
Yes, it was just in the interest of those who are not familiar with that term, tends to infinity.
Tends to infinity, yeah, that's right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Means, it's a mathematical, because there is nothing like an infinity, right? So so we because we are calculating on numbers, so we call it as tending to infinity, rather than calling it as infinity itself. For some of those students,
assuming that we science develops and medicine develops that we can attain immortality, and we do this, then this is what
Exactly.
Please continue.
Exactly. Yeah. What happens, in finance, this happens quite often. Somebody will give a loan, and then they will keep on paying the interest. They will never repay the loan, right? That will happen in finance. So this is quite useful, right? Now we will discuss something called an annuity due. This is similar to immediate annuity certain. There is a small difference though, right? The small difference is here. In immediate annuity certain, the payments are actually at the beginning of, at the end of each year, right? Here, it will be at the beginning of each year. So this cash flow, whatever that I have shown here, is for an immediate annuity certain. That's what we have seen earlier. Now, this 0 will become 1 in case of an annuity due, and the last one will become 0. What that means is, in annuity due, the payment is made at the beginning of each year. So the first year payment is made at the beginning of first year, which is this point, right? The second year payment is made here, which is the beginning of second year. Similarly, the 12th year payment will be made at the end of 11th year or at the start of the beginning of the 12th year. and there won't be any payment made at the end of 12th year because we are defining only 12 payments. So cash flows for the annuity due is slightly different from the immediate annuity in the first and the last point of time, right? So it is called annuity due because the amount is due immediately. So that is why it is called an annuity due. Okay, now let me just change this to 1 because now we are dealing with the annuity due. Okay. Right. The same way we are finding the present value and the accumulated value. There's no other difference to that except the cash flow at time 0 and time 12 have changed. Because of this change, what happens is earlier we have in the denominator we have I. Now there is another element IV. It becomes I into V because the summation is instead of from V to V power 12. Now the summation is from 1 to V power 11. So there is an additional V which is coming over in the denominator. So that is why it has become 1 minus V power 12 by V. And the notation is slightly different here. There is a double dot because it is a due. There is a double dot which is put over the top of A. This is the notation that is used in the subject mathematics of finance. Okay. Similarly, we calculate an accumulated value which is at the end of year 12. Same way, we have an IV or a D at the denominator rather than I. Both this formula are just simple geometric progression. There is nothing more than that. We just simplify that. Now we get to get the value or the equation of value. See, I have put a CT, right? CT is generally the cash flow at time T. And V power T, because it is a discount, we are finding a present value and hence we are using V power T. If I am finding an accumulated value, I am using 1 plus I whole power n minus T. And if there are any cash, I am just looking at the time 0 and time 12 cash flows and adjusting the summation to that effect and replacing the CT by 1 because our cash flows are exactly 1 in this case and finding the value. And this is just a simple geometric progression. This is what is called an annuity due. So the immediate annuity certain, the cash flow starts at the end of year 1. For annuity due, the cash flow starts at the beginning of year 1. So that's the key difference. So that's about the annuity due. Is there any question on annuity due? Okay. So similar to our perpetuity for an immediate annuity certain, we can have a perpetuity due where the first payment is immediate. I receive a payment of 1 now, then 1 year later, 1 2 year later, and so on. And the present value of that perpetuity due is called A double dot infinity, which is equal to 1 by D. The same way, the V power n would tend to 0, and hence this become 1 minus D. Okay. Now I'm going to something called a loan schedule. Before we go to the loan schedule, I just wanted to check if there are any kind of questions so far before we get onto the loan schedule. No questions, right? Okay. Okay, now let's take an example. Okay, suppose you have taken a loan of some amount. Say we are just saying for an example, 1 lakh rupee from a bank, say for housing or education purpose, right? So this is an example. We can have different rates of interest. Say let's take 8% per annum, and let's take a 5-year loan. Okay, I'm just taking it as an annual installment because we have just we have gone through about the annuities just now, the annuity due and the immediate annuity certain. We can have this monthly installment as well. That's as simple as finding the effective monthly rate of interest and doing the same calculation on a monthly basis. So my question is, suppose if I take a loan of 1 lakh and if the bank charges 8% and we paid back in equal installment on 5 equal installments, what would be the annual installment amount? Okay. So I'll just give a clue to this. This is actually an immediate annuity certain because the first installment I would be paying at the end of year 1. Okay, The cash flow is like this. I am receiving 1 lakh from the bank. Okay, so that is plus 1 lakh for me. Now I am going to pay some installment to the bank, 5 installments to the bank. The first installment is at the end of year 1. The second installment is at the end of year 2. The third would be at the end of year 3, and so on up to till end of year 5. There are 5 installments. The question is, this installment have to be equal. Amount have to be equal. I should be paying only equal amount every year, because I'll have to plan for it. No, if I'm taking a loan, and if I have to repay the loan, I can repay the loan only through my salary, and that is more or less uniform in nature, right? So unless I plan for my payment towards the loan in advance, it will become difficult for me to, if I have to pay say 1,000 in 1 year, 2,000 in another year, that will become difficult. So I planned in such a way that I will plan equal amount every year. If the amount is say like 5,000, then every year I will pay 5,000. First year end I will pay 5,000. Second year end I will pay 5,000 till 5th year end, right? So now how much will be the amount of the installment? That's the question. Okay. So do you want to? I can give some time for students to work it out, and then we can check the results if that would be okay.
I think that will be great. They would love to work on it. Do you want them to share the answer with you on chat, or they can just?
Yeah, that will be. Yeah,
okay.
That will be. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you just show the question again?
Yeah, sure. I'll put it on the question.
Are you getting any responses, Arun? You're on mute.
No, I got only one response.
Okay.
So far, Sudhanshu had sent a message to me.
Okay. Can we just see some raise hands who are working on the problem right now, so that we know how many of you are actually working, and accordingly we'll just wait. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Continue, guys. Use of calculator and Excel would be allowed here, right?
Yeah. Generally, the subject is with calculator only, and
yes.
Yeah, and Excel is also allowed. Yeah, I have got one more answer from Raghav.
Okay. We can wait for maybe another 3 to 4 minutes.
Yeah,
Arun,
that's
that
right.
is okay.
Yeah, sure. Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Or in case they have any questions in the time being,
Questions. Yeah, that's right.
okay. So you can ask questions in case you are stuck with the problem or
Any
something.
doubts,
Yeah.
yeah, in proceeding. Sudhanshu has given me an answer of 40,000 and Raghav has given me an answer of 28,000. Now I'll wait for a few more, answers, before I proceed. Anybody else working on that, or any doubts you have, I can clarify. Okay, let me give some more clue. See, let the annual installment amount be X. Okay, so somebody is, actually, yeah, this annual installment, you'll have to find. And since this is uniform, right? Someone says, around 5,600 approximately. Yeah. Someone says 29,380. Like the answer that my children have also got, when I have given the problems to them. And Raghav KH1 says 56,000. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's slightly discuss this, and I would like to kind of give some more insight to this. See, our loan is 1 lakh, right? That has to be repaid. So definitely our amount has to be more than 20,000, right? So each installment, if we pay less than 20,000, we won't get even the loan repaid. Further, we also have to pay some interest to that, right? So if I pay interest for every year, then my annual installment would be different, because after I pay the first installment, I would have repaid some capital also to it, right? So that is the complication. So it's a bit linked internally, right? So time period is 5 years, right? And I equal to 8% per annum. That's what we have assumed, right? Now I'm just saying we use an immediate annuity certain, because I'm just saying that the installment is paid at the end of every year. So this is like an immediate annuity certain, except that instead of 1, I have X now at the end of each year. Instead of a 12-year period or an any year period, I have a 5-year period, right? So X into V power T, if I sum it over a 5-year period, that's the annuity. That's the present value of that annuity. So if I have a cash flow of X at the end of year 1, X at the end of year 2, X at the end of year 3, X at the end of year 4, 5, the present value of all these cash flows is X into A5, right? So that is equal to X into 1 minus B power 5 divided by I, right? So that should be exactly equal to the loan, right? If the bank has to make 8% per annum exactly, that has to be equal to 1 lakh. So if you set these two equal, then you will get the amount. So let me just check whether anyone else have got this answer there. Okay. Yeah. So now if you can proceed with this clue now and find out what is the X, that will be great. So let me just help for you, because some of you may not have the calculator. Yeah. So So I need V, right, to calculate this value. So V is nothing but 1 by 1.08, which is approximately this. I have used a lot of digits because in if we start rounding off, then it will become a we may get a different amount. So I have enough digits before round off. I'll round it off at one point of time finally. And I need V power 5. So I've just used x power y in the calculator, and I will get 0.680584. And so this is exactly how I calculate. Let me just show you. All right. So this is 1 divided by 1.08. Actually, you can use 1 by x also, isn't it? This is V, and I am just finding 5 years for this, which is what is that 0.680584, which is V power 5. Now I'll have to find 1 minus V power 5, right? So I'm just subtracting 1 from this. This is negative because I have subtracted 1 over the other. And this is 1 minus V power 5. It's a positive sign, and divided by I, which is 0.08, right? So which comes to 3.99, right? So this is the A5. This is A5, right? Now I have to divide my 1 lakh with this, because x into A5 is equal to 1 lakh. This A5 is 4 approximately. So that 1 lakh divided by 3.99 is what I have got here as 25,045, right? So you actually pay up 25,000 rupees at the end of every year, and over a 5-year period, you pay all the interest at 8% per annum, and also the capital, and you will pay the loan in a 5-year period. Exactly. So let's look at how actually this works. Okay, let me just show this to you in a tabular way. At the beginning of year 1, we had the 1 lakh loan, right? Now at the end of year 1, we will have an interest accumulated for this, right? We'll have to pay 8%. So on a loan of 1 lakh, an interest of 8% will become 8,000, right? So this is what is the status as at the end of year 1. Now at the end of year 1, I will also make an installment payment of 25,045, right? Now this 25,045, part of it they will take for interest, and part of it they will take for capital. How much they will take for interest? They will take the 8,000 first, the entire interest they will take, right? So the 8,000 will go towards interest. They will adjust your installment amount towards the interest first, always. The balance will only be adjusted against your capital. The balance will be 17,000. This 17,000 is the capital you have repaid. So out of the 25,000 you paid as an installment at the end of year 1, 8,000 is taken towards your interest, and the balance 17,000 is taken towards your capital. Now you have paid 17,000 capital at the end of year 1, right? So the loan outstanding will reduce to 83,000, or rather 82,954 to be precise in this case, right? So the loan actually reduces at the end of year 1 because you have paid some capital also. Now this 82,954 will become the loan at the beginning of the next year, because you have the first year transaction is over, you have paid the interest, you have also repaid some loan, a part of the loan. So the balance loan is 82,000. Now for the second year, the interest is calculated only on this outstanding loan, which is 8% of this 83,000 works to 6,636 approximately. Now again at the end of year 2, you will pay 25,000, right? Because your installment is not going to change. This is uniform. This we have already fixed, right? So 6,600 goes towards the interest. The rest 18,000 and odd goes towards your capital. You can see first year you had repaid only 17,000 towards capital, but second year you have repaid 18,500 because your interest have gone down. Why the interest have gone down? Because your outstanding loan itself has reduced, right? So that is the connect. So the second year you repay around 18,400 towards the capital. So the loan outstanding at the end of year 2 becomes 64,000, right? So this again becomes the beginning of the next year loan, and the interest is charged 8% on that. So we proceed like that. So every year, the annual installment is only 25,000. But out of that annual installment, I mean, the bank adjusts two things. One is, they will take some interest portion and some capital portion. So this 25,000, part of it is adjusted towards your interest due, and part of it is adjusted towards your loan repayment. So the interest adjustment keeps on reducing as you keep on repaying your capital, and your capital will keep on increasing as you as the loan gets reduced over the payment of the capital each year. And at the end of year 5, it will become 0. So this is how we have just used the present value calculation, and we have used it in a way that the loan gets diminished over a period of time equally, and it becomes finally 0, right? So this is how the bank calculates your annual installment or a monthly installment. You remember we studied about IM, right? So if it is if the M is 12, then it becomes a monthly rate of interest. So the bank usually, we repay on a monthly basis. We repay equated monthly installment or EMI, right? So they will use something like a I-12, right? They will use a effective rate of interest per annum, but then they will use a convertible monthly rate because our repayment is on every month, right? And then they will look at how many installments we pay. Suppose we take a 10-year loan, they will take 10 into 120, which will be 120 installments. So they will calculate each monthly installment exactly using this formula, and the loan gets extinguished over that period, but the installment remains as equal. Here, I know a lot answered. I'm sure I mean, the connect to interest might not have happened. I know that is why some of the answers are different. But if you can understand that money earns interest at each point of time, right? Whatever you pay also will earn interest. Whatever you...
Sorry, Arun, we are losing your voice. Your voice is cracking.
You have to pay interest on this, how the whole thing works. So if you have a schedule... Hello?
Yeah, now it is
Hello?
back. Now it is back. Yes, now it is back.
Yes. So either ways, it is, the interest will work, whether you receive money or pay money. Okay. Now the question is, right, the bank does that, all this, housing loan institutions does this, but how do they calculate at some point? So after some period, say at year 4, what is my capital outstanding? This in this case, the capital outstanding at the end of year 3 or end of year 4 is this, right? I mean, 44,663 at the end of year. This is actually the beginning of year 4, end of year 3. And this is end of year 4 and beginning of year 5. How do they calculate this loan outstanding? Similarly, how do they calculate this interest component in each of these installments, right? So this is again, we use the same logic. We know that the loan outstanding at the beginning of the year is X into A5, right? X in our case is 25,000. If we come to the year end of year 1, that is beginning of year 2, it is as simple as we calculate the present value of the future installments that are yet to be paid by us. The bank will calculate that, which is nothing but X into A4. That is the loan outstanding at any point of time. So loan outstanding at beginning of year T is the present value of all the installments that are yet to be paid, which is equal to X into the annuity factor. Now, what is the interest paid at the end of each year, right? So we have this interest calculation, right? The column 3 or the column 5, which is the interest paid at the end of each year, which is nothing but the loan at the beginning of the year into the interest rate, right? The loan at the beginning of the year is nothing but X into A5 minus T plus 1, right? Which if we multiply by I, then it becomes X into 1 minus B power, because we know that A5 T plus 1 is 1 minus B power 5 minus T plus 1 by I. The I will get cancelled, and this will be the value of the interest paid at the end of year 1. Similarly, what is the capital paid of this will be the balance, right? I have an installment of X, and out of that interest adjusted is whatever that we have seen just now, and the balance will be the capital, which will become x into v power 5 minus t plus 1. Okay, so this is in summary about the loan schedule. Do we have time? Can we do one more exam problem, Vinay? 11:20, right?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Or do you want to quickly just ask if they have? Some of them were requesting if you can go to the previous slide or something. So those who wanted to go to a particular slide, can you just tell the slide number? Is it just the immediate or something? Just unmute and speak. So this is just in with the concern that they might need that to solve the problem that you are going to. Guys, is this the slide that you guys were talking about? Just speak up. Sorry, Arun, you were saying something.
No, I'm fine. I just moved to the slide.
So Arun, I really felt, yes, Raghav.
Excuse me, sir. I have a doubt, sir.
Yeah, Raghav, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. If our interest is 8% per annum, then it's 8,000 per year. So when we sum it up for 5 years, it's 40,000, and our amount to be paid becomes 1 year plus 40,000, 1,40,000. So when we have to pay it in equal installments over a period of 5 years, it should be 28,000. I didn't understand the part.
Yeah, that is right. What you're saying is right, but then where you are missing the point is, first year you are going to pay how much? 28,000, right?
Yes, sir.
But the 20,000 you are repaying towards capital, no?
Yes, sir.
So the loan will reduce, right? You had a loan of 1 lakh, but now at the end of year 1, you have repaid 20,000, right?
Yes, sir.
So now the bank will charge interest only on the balance loan, which is 80,000.
Okay, sir.
So that is why the interest actually will keep on reducing as you repay the capital. Now, if you use that logic, what will happen is the second year your amount will become 20,000 plus 8% on 80,000, which will be 6,400, right?
Yes, sir.
So which will become 26,400. So first year it was 28,000. Second year it is 26,400, and it will keep on reducing. But the problem we had was we wanted equal installment. We didn't want a unequal installment. In our case, what is happening is first year it is becoming 28,000. Second year it is becoming 26,400, and so on, which is not equal. We wanted to find an equal installment, and hence it is not working out. Otherwise,
Okay,
your
sir.
point is right.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We can move ahead, Arun. One
So
more
I had a
problem.
doubt.
Yes.
So in the previous slide, you said that loan paid at the end of year T. So sir, is that like loan paid from year 1 to year T?
Year 1 to year?
T.
Yeah, that's right. Let's just go to this slide, right?
Yes, sir.
Loan paid only in that year, not till all the years. If you have to, this is only at the end of year T for that installment, for the installment that we have paid in year T. Out of that installment, how much is loan paid at the end of that year? Not the cumulative loan paid at the end of year T. If you have to find the cumulative value, then you will have to add up all the previous years loan paid also.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Maybe we can do one quick one more problem. If
let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah. So let's just change.
And I think for a matter of homework, maybe they can do it out as an exercise. If they have a home loan statement or something like that at home, right? Yeah. And the rate of interest might have changed from what it was early, and then they can take that example and
that's exactly. Yeah. So maybe what we can do, instead of 1 lakh, you can take a loan amount of 10 lakh, and instead of the time period of 5 years, you can take the time period as say 12 years. I know, let's not make it 10, let's make it 12, so that no, I mean, it's not equally divisible, right? So 10 lakh loan amount, 12-year time period, and let's make the interest rate I as say 7% per annum. Now, if we can work out X, then that will be great. Do you want to do it now, or do you want to take it as a homework?
Let them do it now. We can see, we can wait for maybe 3 to
Yeah.
4 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and if they are stuck, maybe they can just raise their hand and tell you where they are stuck.
Sure. So the same way you can take, here time period is 12 years. I'll just write, so that. So loan of 10 lakh, bank charges you 7% per annum, and you repay the loan is in 12-year time. Okay. You can use the same logic. So it's a equal installment. It's an immediate annuity certain for a 12-year period. Any doubts, please raise your hand or just message me in the chat.
Sir, how to find A of 12?
A of 12, you have the formula, right? You have 1 minus v power 12 by I.
Thank you.
A of, yeah. Is it going okay? Any doubts?
Those who are still working on it, can you just do a raise hand?
We have got some answers. We'll wait for one or two more answers. Sudhanshu, Venkat, I think they have given some answers.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Arun?
Hello. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can. Yeah. I think we have got a few answers and a few of them
Okay.
have got it right also. So let me
Okay.
just ask one of them, like, I think, Soham, Sahasya, I mean, a few of them, Venkat have got them right. So let me ask, Soham, can you explain how you have got this 125,902?
Sir, I did it in Excel. I
Oh, you
made
did
a
it in
table.
Okay, you did it in Excel. Okay, so can anyone else explain that? Sahasya?
So
Yeah.
sir, I used that formula of annuity.
Okay.
Sir, first the value of V I got was
Okay.
0.934
Okay. Okay.
average. Then
Okay.
so this is 12 years.
Okay.
So V power 12 will like I got 0.44. So 1 minus 0.44 was 0.56.
Okay.
Then the value then I substituted in the original equation. Then
Okay.
by that, then I found the value of x to be 1,25,902.
Very good. Okay. Okay. So yeah, that's he's explained it very nicely. So simply what he had done, let me just explain you from the calculator. So our interest rate is 7%. So it was 1.07, right? So first we take 1.07, and then we take 1 by x because it is v, right? So I'm just pressing 1 by x. Now I'm taking power 12 because I'll have to find v power 12. Okay. So this is v power 12. Now I subtract 1 because I'll have to find 1 minus v power 12. This is a positive sign. 1 minus v power 12 will be 0.555 because I have subtracted the other way. So, and then divided this by the interest rate, which is 0.07 in our case, right? So this is what is A12, right? Now we will have this x into A12 equal to 10 lakh, right? Now we will have to, x equal to 10 lakh divided by A12. So I'll find 1 by x of this, and then this will be multiplied by the 10 lakh amount, which will give you the annual installment. Okay, so if you do that, then no, you will get the annual installment, which is 125,902 in our case. You can do a schedule like what we have done and check, at the end of year 12, the loan outstanding will become 0. Okay, so this is a very simple, straight calculation where the cash flows are uniform, the interest rates are uniform. There are no in between further loans, from the bank. However, in practice, what will happen is that there would be further changes to the problem, right? What are the changes that might happen, right? So that we will do. One is that the interest rate could be different. It could be a continuous rate, like our force of interest, or else the annuities, the installments could be payable more than once a year. It could be every month, or it could be half year, it could be quarter year. So it could be p times a year, or it could even be continuously throughout a year if it is a kind of a regular daily payout like structure, right? The payout could be increasing or decreasing as well. In such case, we will use increasing annuity or a decreasing annuity, where we will have like a arithmetic progression. The cash flow itself will be an arithmetic progression. There where we will have initial annuity, and then it will keep on increasing with some difference, right? So these kind of things will happen in practice, and hence the calculation will need to be adjusted for those things. Further, we will also have something called a sinking fund theory, where instead of paying that, I will pay only interest to the bank, and I will keep on creating a kitty where I will put some money, and then once that accumulates to 1 lakh, I will pay to the bank. So that's called a sinking fund. So these things could be used in practice when we are repaying a loan, right? So there are other things like we know that we had three things in the equation. One is the time period, which is the N. One is the interest rate, which is the I, right? And one is the capital itself, right? Or the accumulated value itself, the present value or the accumulated value, right? Now, if we know 2, we can find the third one, right? Now, if in some cases, what will happen is they will give us the present value, they will give us the accumulated value, and they will also give us the time period N, and we may have to find out the rate of interest I. In some cases, we may have to find N. Those are all called the internal rate of return or the discounted payback period. This is essentially useful in case we are doing a project, and we need to know, we will know that how much the project will give us, and if we are going to take a loan, whether it will be worthwhile to take a loan and fund the project. So those kind of things, are cross-checked using internal rate of return or a discounted payback period. So these are some of the topics. Maybe we will do it, at another session again. Building on what we have already learned. We wanted to keep it a bit light and simple for the first, session, and hence, we have made it a bit easy. And in the further sessions, we can take further topics. Any doubts or any questions that you may have? One particular thing I wanted to do in this session was that I wanted to derive the force of interest for you. Maybe if not, and if we do not have time, then we can do it in the next session as well. Any questions?
Guys, and just stay back for a minute, okay? After the session. This is not for a group photo, for something else.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah, please.
Sir, we come across the topic of force of interest, in which that interest is infinite, that throughout the year.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah, so
is there any practical application, or this is just a thought?
It's suppose if the what happens, that it's more of a theory. In practice, what happens is there will be a time period which will be defined. It could be even a day, or it could even be an hour, but we will exactly know what is the M, right? But in practice, what happens is if there are multiple, if you look at a bank, there will be so many customers, they will be paying at different points of time. They will be paying every day, they will be paying every hour. So for them, for an institution, the cash flows could keep on coming throughout the year, right? Similarly, the interest also, for the bank, if they have lent, or if they have borrowed from another bank, that will keep on coming at different points of time at almost continuously. And in such cases, there are institutions involved, this is used. But for an individual case, this is this is more theory. Only if we aggregate a lot of individuals, so many individuals pay at different points of time, then it is as good as a continuous interest rate or a continuous cash flow.
Okay, sir. That means it is a large scale.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Yes. So while others ask the question, I just wanted to take a quick feedback through a poll. It's an anonymous poll, so it will be good if you can share your response for one question about the session, about the topic. Meanwhile, others can ask your questions, but your feedback would be very valuable. Okay. Yeah. And it's an anonymous poll, so feel free to express your views. All right, the polls are coming up. Arun, would you like to say something before we conclude?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I have taken it too fast or too slow. That's the only thing that I had in mind. But if they had any questions, they can always reach out to me. You can maybe through you or else, I can provide my contact details. And at any point of time, if they have any personal doubt, also I would be happy to kind of help them out.
So
because in a session, it might be probably too difficult to accommodate all of that.
True. Okay, 2 more people have to participate in the poll. May I request you to kindly just give your opinion? Yeah. Meanwhile, Arun, I personally enjoyed your session very much. I really liked how you started building from the scratch. For anybody who doesn't have or who has just the background of what a simple interest, and then you build on that, and the kind of examples also that you used was very, very interesting. And I think this problem the topic becomes more interesting when we start earning and when we start using our own money.
Oh yeah.
So certain amount of interest comes more when we do that. At least a bit of interest that I have in this topic is because when it really matters to me. It's my money, it's my hard-earned money, right? So yes. The loan and investments and all these things start mattering much more. So yeah.
So the one thing I wanted to add is, of course, we are just touching the early part of this finance course, but the investment is quite interesting. It builds on a lot of differential calculus, differential equations, and integration and stuff like that. And some of this, the Black-Scholes, model or the Eddington theory. They're truly pioneering in nature. In a sense, they actually it's the Black-Scholes, they won the Nobel Prize for finding the value of a derivative in a stock market. But that's purely the fundamentals or the mathematics of finance only, where whatever that we have studied only built on that only. But they have used physics. They have used the heat equation to actually kind of get into that, and then they summed it up in such a nice way. And we don't have a Nobel in math, but through economics they have won it for investment, isn't it? So yeah, so that's the research in the investment area, as you rightly said, because it's our money, and it's you lose it or you gain it, right? It's a lot. It makes a lot of sense as we progress into earning for ourselves, or even if you work in a finance department of a bank. Any institution for that matter runs for in some way or the other have to deal with the finance, right? They'll have to pay, they'll have to spend, they'll have to invest, they'll have to get some capital and stuff like that. So it's very important to understand the linkages. And then I haven't actually shown that force of interest. It's actually it's actually a differential calculus where we will integrate the the IM, which is the nominal rate, is actually 4% plus 4%. That is how we have defined 8% per annum convertible half yearly, right? So it is sum of 2 half years, right? So when M tends to infinity, we will be summing at each point of time. Then it will become an integration, and and then we will use it comes out very nicely. It's f dash of t by f of t into dt, and it will become log. And then it become log 1 plus t. So there are a lot of math which will exactly flow into the equation as we move forward. So for those of you who are really kind of math like math so much, all of you, I'm sure, but who are also interested in how this whole thing of money investment works. You should definitely look into this.
Yeah,
that's what I would summarize.
And what I really loved is just through the compound interest formula, which we just take it for granted. Not compound interest, I mean the geometric progression kind of thing, right? And what are the kind of problems that we usually see in school is just something, right? But it is just taking the geometric progression formula, and then you see in how different ways it is applied. So I really love that part the most, taking something very, very basic, very fundamental, and
exactly,
then okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I was so amazed because we have always done this geometric progression more as a theory. We have just some series and all,
right.
But in practice, in application, right? So that's the interesting part of it. Yeah, that's true.
True.
All right. I would be happy to take any further sessions or even questions. Vinay, and as you feel comfortable and as the students feel comfortable, we'll take it forward.
Sure. So guys, what you can do is we'll end the session here, and if you have any questions, the presentation will be shared definitely in the Google Classroom. Go through it once again, and if you have any questions, feel free to write to us at raisingaMathematician@gmail.com, and we'll share the email to Arun. Yeah. All right. So thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, Arun, for taking out this time. It was a wonderful session, and we really look forward to the second one.
Sure, Vinay. Thank you so much, and thanks to all the students. Thank you very much for the participation as well.